let's get on to the Star Wars indeed. We're going to talk about Star Wars news. Oh, this is kind of exciting. We are back into the grind of Star Wars news, and it can sometimes grind down where you're like, all right, we'll look at this teaser poster, and and some of that's fun, and some of them are beautiful art. The break and then coming back, I actually have a renewed energy, Joseph, for Star Wars news to actually talk about what's going on. So,
yeah, me too. Yeah. I have a renewed energy and a renewed perspective. I'm excited to talk about every one of these things. Some of the news things that we picked out, because we're looking back at news that has happened across the time that we've been on break during the strikes. Some of them I'm super excited to talk about. I've been really excited to talk about. But it's also been a great time to go, oh, we don't have to cover every bit of news. It's been great to check back in and go, let's talk about the things that we're passionate about and have a true response to, as opposed to, we were getting into some times there where like some of the news about movies that may or may not happen was getting kind of repetitive. So it's really fun to come back to it with a fresh and renewed perspective, and also in understanding that we don't have to cover every story.
Yeah, and that's actually just it's a liberation in my soul. But we're excited to get to some. And as Joseph said, we did go through a lot of the stories we've missed during the over 118 days of the strike and all that stuff. But we might miss some. Don't worry. If we maybe come back to it later, we might. Or as Joseph said, we maybe felt it wasn't high on the depth chart of discussions. But we got a kind of a recent bit of news from last week. Taika Waititi speaks and Star Wars fans talk. Of course they do. We're talking as well. While promoting Next Goal Wins, Taika was asked about his Star Wars film. He said it will be, and there was a dramatic pause, a Taika Waititi film. He then said it's going to piss people off. There's another quote from an Entertainment Weekly article. You've got, Joseph, we'll go into that. First, I just want to start. This is a fact, right? It will. It will, because of course it will. But what do we actually take from that? And is it a pissed off because it'll be too uniquely him, which seems like it might be? Is that a comment on the fandom overall? Probably is. These are all leading questions, but let's comment on the Taika discourse that has emerged, including a more serious and thoughtful response. Well, I think this is thoughtful as well, but a different kind of response in the other article.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It feels like during the strike, it was like a storm or a fever broke, and it feels like a lot of people are being a little bit more direct. Taika Waititi always been direct, but this is very like, screw it, as is a guiding principle. I think my first reaction to this is, yes, Taika Waititi is in this hot moment of ups and downs that we will talk about. But I go back to when Rise of Skywalker came out, and some people didn't like it, which perfectly fine to not like it. But those people saying they just tried to be people pleasers. And it was always weird to me of like, the Star Wars fandom is too big. You can't. It's really hard to pander to the Star Wars community at this point. So I feel like this is very, very true of Taika's film, that it will be uniquely him and that will annoy people. But I feel like that's true of almost any Star Wars film, of like, and it will piss some people off because it's impossible to pander to the entire community.
Yeah, it's just simply a fact. Even being cheeky the way he said it, and how it was, how it might relate to him. And I'm, none of these folks, they're not completely insulated from the discussion world. It's funny when you run into some folks that maybe have a different kind of career path, and they're off producing things in the studio. They're kind of like, I don't know, I don't go on TikTok. What's a podcast? Like, there's some people that I've run into that have that vibe. Taika couldn't escape it, especially even his last film, which I haven't had a chance to see yet. I don't even know if it's out on a big scale, but I've seen some tweets about it. Some people going, it's great. Other people going, oh, it's lazy. It's just like you can't win for losing these days, I guess.
Yeah. I think I also think that this is such a great news story for us to dive back into, because in the grand tradition of Star Wars news, we are talking about something that won't happen for many, many years, if it happens at all. We're going to talk more about the upcoming slate later. But a part of my reaction to this was like, this is really intriguing. This is really funny. This is really telling about who Taika Waititi is. And it will also have absolutely no relevance to us until about 2037, if this movie even comes out.
Doing the math on that, he has said in that other news bite, I think he said he's got 3 or 4 of the scripts he's working on. He just finished this one. He wants to take his time with this. There's another quote in the past from like Kathleen Kennedy not too long ago saying, he needs a third act, and you know they're still working on it. And I want him to take all the time in the world. But it is interesting to do that math. That you're right. We got the 3 announced, and we're going to get into the slate and everything. But it's like this conversation will be a faint memory by the time this film comes out.
Yeah. Here's that other quote you've been mentioning. It's from an Entertainment Tonight interview. Taika saying, "At the moment, I'm still developing something with them," meaning Lucasfilm. "Like me, they have a lot of projects going on. I think they're going to push it until I finish these other projects," Waititi told ET. "I've got about 4 other scripts that I'm trying to finish. My thing is I want to take my time with that and get it right. I don't want to rush this movie." So that is a less cheeky, more straightforward answer. But also in some ways saying the same thing of like, I'm going to really take my time to make the movie I want to make. And, you know, we're developing it, and news will come out eventually.
And that, as a Star Wars fan, I couldn't want anything more than that, right? Someone says, I love this, I respect it, I want to get it right. It's done, sold for me.
Yeah.
I might have some bigger questions on, you know, his style is always debated, and I'm a fan of his style, but I know it doesn't always translate. I know, you know, the most recent Thor wasn't well received. I know you have some thoughts on it in a positive sense. We're always going to have those discussions, but this is what I want from an artist. I don't want anyone to say, yeah, diving in, 3rd act, we'll get to set and figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's my biggest takeaway from this, and I'd be interested to hear what you think. I think Taika is an indie filmmaker, and he has never backed off from that perspective. He landed a huge hit with Thor Ragnarok. I think part of that was, I do think it's a really good film, a really well balanced film where both the comedy and the depth are clear. But I also think it landed at the right moment where Chris Hemsworth clearly had phenomenal comedy chops that weren't being put to full use in Thor. It redefined the character. It let Chris Hemsworth stretch a little bit. It was wearing its politics about a lot of things on its sleeve. So it was just sort of this like drink of fresh water in a desert moment. I don't think Taika has changed. I think he's like, everything I did with Thor Ragnarok, I'm going to do harder and faster with Thor Love and Thunder. And it didn't work for people, but Taika didn't change. He only got more Taika, more, I'm an indie filmmaker, which means I would love for you to like my film, but this is an extension of me. This is an expression of me. I am putting myself, not on celluloid, I guess, but on ones and zeros. I'm putting my personality on this film. And I think that's who he's always been. And it's more just that, that people fell in love with that and then fell out of love with that. How do you feel about kind of Taika as holding on to this? Like, I'm an indie filmmaker who happened to break into the big time and make some big blockbusters, but I've never changed. I'm an indie filmmaker.
I really agree with that, and it happens a lot in the world of art, right? Like a band breaks for being who they are, and then they're by the 2nd album, 3rd album, people are like, God, I hate who they are. What can you do? And I think you got to stick to your guns, and adapt and change along the way, and try to think that cool. But the conversation always around Taika and Star Wars is the comedy aspect of it, right? And rightfully so. I don't necessarily agree that he's just a comedy filmmaker, and I don't think you would say that as well. I think that seems to always come up because he does funny things, but he does have a lot of heart into it. That 8th episode of Mando season 1 has some comedy that even you and I on the record are saying, the Biker Scout stuff isn't our favorite, but it ends with this great piece of heart art at the end with the sacrifice and just kind of I trust him. And what you said, I really like what you said in there about Chris Hemsworth of there was some comedy chops waiting to explode out, especially in the Marvel world. Taika got that out. There's a fear and an understandable trepidation about comedy Star Wars, and no one's suggesting that he's going to put out a sitcom like Star Wars comedy film, but humor, laugh, if he builds a story around a crew or, something, the interpersonal, relationships going on, the comedy is going to come out of that. It might be more, quote, funnier than other films, but I bet it's going to have the same heart. I bet it's going to reach for the same big lessons and themes that all the Star Wars does, as he did in that episode. So I like what you're saying about him, and taking that from his quotes of, it's going to be a Taika Waititi film. And that's what we would want.
Yeah, yeah, and I really do hope that that it's maybe even a smaller story in terms of galactic significance, and his own characters, and can really explore all the ideas that he is interested in. Because I think I'm resistant to Star Wars comedy sometimes. Of like, if it turned out to be like this is a young Kylo Ren, and he's tripping and making jokes, I might not like it myself. But if you're inventing your own characters, I think it's a different thing.
Kylo tripping and making jokes. Now that you've said it.
Yeah. Real quick thing for me is we talk about Star Wars, but also, free ourselves a little bit to explore the other pop culture. I do think Thor Ragnarok is a really, really solid film. And I think the comedy and the heart and the heaviness is balanced really well. So I do personally think it is a better balanced film than Love and Thunder. But one of the things that's really fascinating to me about Taika, and one of the reasons I love Love and Thunder, is that his style and what makes people mad is he loves combining not just comedy, not wry, sarcastic comedy, but big, outlandish comedy with not just depth or heart, but like devastatingly serious. And like I know you haven't seen Thor Love and Thunder. A lot of the bits are like, that joke didn't land for me because it's too big, or I saw it coming 5 minutes earlier. Not all the comedy works for me, but it's something close to my heart to be bold enough to combine the extremes of human experience from the absolute absurdity of being alive in the way that comedy can express that to absolute kind of some of the most serious issues we can deal with as artists. And it's a fascinating thing where sometimes if there's any comedy, that's all that people can take away. And
yes,
I do think in Love and Thunder that the balance was probably off, but I've seen so many people go, it was just goofy. The jokes are goofy. It's about a woman dying of cancer, and what if all of our gods abandon us? It's, it's got some heavy stuff, but there's this thing sometimes where if the comedy is too big, even a little too big, that's all people see. And I'm really interested in your take on that as somebody who loves comedy, but I think you love comedy, but I think you are also unsure about big outlandish comedy. How do you feel about combining outlandish comedy with like really deep, really serious ideas?
Yeah, I think it absolutely could work. And there's a, if I'm in the mood to sit and watch the Naked Gun films, and just go through some Zucker Brothers kind of slapsticky stuff, which I grew up liking, I'll do it. And I still think you can find some themes in there and dig into the jokes. But I'd rather have my comedy, what you're describing. And I think what you might be touching on here, we've discussed it before, and we maybe have to own our own experiences as people who dabble in comedy, but also hopefully can find some purpose behind it. There is even in award shows, right? You are a dramatic performer or you're a comedic performer, and never the two shall meet, especially when it comes to awards. It's a little force field goes up when people hear comedy jokes, and that doesn't contain meaning, and it's been an ongoing battle with me in comedy. And words matter, and what we're talking about matters, and how you joke about it is important, and there's great purpose behind it. So there's even stuff in the Thor Ragnarok, a movie I've seen and do enjoy. There's a couple, shake weight references. I've talked about that before, but that's not going to be in Star Wars. And I don't think he's going to put that there. And I love What We Do in the Shadows, the series, as a lot of people. I'm not alone in that, obviously. And it's outlandish, but it's got so much heart. I don't want people to be afraid of that if that even kind of shows up in Star Wars in a film.
Yeah. Yeah, a part of me almost feels like I would love it if in the year 2037, which is the imaginary year that I think this film will come out in a joking way, if in the year 2037, Lucasfilm was just like, bam, the first Star Wars comedy, labeled it as a comedy.
Yeah.
And then when people approach it as a comedy going in, I think sometimes they're more open to discovering the heart and the humor and the relationships, because people start watching What We Do in the Shadows to watch a comedy and then become really hooked on the relationships, which are sincere and real.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, it's scaring me because I actually kind of agree with your 2037 year in or around. And Ragnarok came out in 2017. So imagine 20 years later, audiences might be open for something entirely different, have no understanding of who Taika or Ragnarok was. Because as Taika says himself, they're not going to remember my name. They're not 40 years from now. I'm not going to be a trivia answer. Whatever that conversation that broke out of that around that. That's fat. That's almost scary. That's almost scary.
It's deeply scary. I take back my joke of 2037. Let's get it a little closer to 2027.
I mean, it's not inaccurate. We're not done talking movies, though. That was some of the latest news, but also a little tidbit came out, and we're going to talk about Kevin Feige's Star Wars film and it being a no-go. Feige was asked by Entertainment Weekly's Ash Crossan, friend of the show, former guest, in early November if his Star Wars movie is happening. And he said, and this is my editorial, a little brusquely, no. End of interview. He didn't say that. And they all love Ash. No other comment. But so let's definitely dive in. Thoughts on this? Dare we say unsurprising news, Joseph?
This is the least surprising news I have ever heard. This is the least surprising no I've ever heard. And I have heard no in lots of contexts in which I was expecting to say no. Bitches, asking people out on dates. I've heard a lot of no's I was expecting to hear, and this is still the least surprising. That interview is really funny because this is such a strange time for the MCU. And Ash's interview with him was great, and he has obviously a good relationship with Ash as an interviewer, and it felt like he was trying to kind of dole out a little bit, give a little bit more to entertain ideas of the MCU without spoiling anything, all that. It was like watching a ballet between a producer, an expert producer, and an expert interviewer doing a beautiful ballet about the MCU. And then that Star Wars movie happened. No, bye. And it felt purposeful too. He's just like, I'm not going to be asked about this 800 more times. I'm just going to cut this off. It's done. It's done.
Done. I love that, actually. I hadn't even thought about it in those terms, that it wasn't that he was annoyed with the question. He was just, I can see the future because I've experienced the past. No, let's move on.
It really, I wanted the comedy of like tapping the mic, looking directly in the camera and just saying, no. And no one ever asked me about it again. It's done. Leave it be.
The curtain comes down on like a Wes Anderson movie. Just now, look, we say unsurprising news, but it wasn't like this hadn't been worked on or talked about. The whole involvement of Michael Waldron, and he had some comments out there and over the last year or so about working on it. I have no doubt that this was a thing, that this was on some whiteboard somewhere or a cork board with a post-it note, just hammered into the wall of Feige film. And I still think it could be possible down the line. And there's a lot of conversation I've already seen this weekend of, well, he's got his hands full with Marvel. Yeah. He's always had his hands full with Marvel. I don't think this current phase is distressed. I think they're trying to rebuild some things. And there's a lot of conversation to be had around how the movies are discussed and the box office conversation and some of the bad faith arguments around those discussions. I haven't seen the Marvels. I know you have, and feel free to bring that into it. So I don't think this is him, having I got to go concentrate on Marvel. I just think there's a lot going on. We're going to talk about what we know of the slate, and if they weren't coming to an agreement, and maybe he is busy with Marvel, day job, and this was his evening hobby. And maybe since again things change. Hey, we're now going this direction. Can you fit into this now? Okay. At the end of the day, I'm very happy because we've been playing this game in Star Wars movie news for 5 years now. A definitive no from the source works for me.
Oh, I love a definitive no from the source, or a definitive yes. Anything definitive from the source. Yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot, but as we're heading into talking about the slate and looking forward to the Star Wars films, which I really am, and hoping the best for them, the analogy that I was thinking about over the strike is these development process is natural. That's why it's called development. It's, hey, let's talk. Maybe we're developing. Developing can mean anything from one meeting to a script and a contract, but the film doesn't get made. That's, that's what development is. But because Star Wars in particular, sometimes Marvel, but Star Wars in particular is so popular and people are so excited, every little possibility gets sort of reported and then internalized by some fans as for sure going to happen.
Yeah.
In the analogy I was thinking about, like, I've never really been on the dating apps because I've been married the entire time they've existed. But it's kind of like if you're on a dating app and Toby and Jessica match and they're going out on a date, maybe 2 dates, and then reporting on that, like, Toby and Jessica together, when is the wedding? How many kids do you think they'll have? It's jumping from a dating phase to a what will their grandkids be named, from the perception of development is like dating. A movie being released is at least marriage.
I've talked about the analogy of like food, like, oh, Lucasfilm's going to make a pizza and then they make tacos and you're upset you didn't get the pizza. Yours is hilarious. And I want you to, let's get you 5 minutes at Flappers this weekend. Because it's hilarious. It's absolutely true. And not without passion, right? Even if you have two friends that meet and you're like, oh, are they, where's this going to go? It comes from a place of love. I think all the discussions around these films generally from our side of things do come from a place of love. But then that love becomes attachment.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is I got no problem, and I'm excited by like we're talking about Sean Levy. There are people I know who love his work, and people are so excited for his Star Wars movie, and I got no problem with people saying, "Oh, I love Sean Levy and Star Wars. I hope they get together, just like I hope Toby and Jessica hook up." But I hope not. I don't want it to be like, oh, Luke, did you hear Lucasfilm got together and broke Toby and Jessica up, that they canceled their wedding? Like, they were never going to get married. They were just dating. And you decided they were going to get married.
Yeah.
So nobody broke them up. Nobody broke them up.
Mom. Sorry. It's wonderful. And we can start moving into the slate here, Joseph. Let's see if any thoughts on Feige. But the funny thing I will say is, as a longtime Star Wars fan, as someone who has never followed MCU closely, but has always enjoyed my experience in it, who thinks Kevin Feige is a legendary producer who changed the industry in a lot of ways. I'm relieved of this, and not relieved anything about him, anything about my worries about him doing Star Wars. There's just something, again, that definitive no of, hey, let's put this on the shelf, and it's one less thing to have to worry about as a Star Wars fan.
No, I agree. I think maybe some writers, directors, producers without as much baggage and relationship to audiences will maybe help audiences focus on the story rather than sort of the pre-narrative or the relationship. Other thing with me about Feige is like, hey, the movie might not have worked out even if everything was going gangbusters with MCU. But just, quick reminder that even before the strikes, when when Chapek went bye-bye and Iger said hello there again, he thought that everything was that there was too much Marvel and maybe too much Star Wars too. So he had already asked to pump the brakes. MCU is in the process of folding in all those Fox properties: Deadpool, X-Men, Fantastic Four. I don't want to get into it now, but there's stuff going on with the actor they cast as the main baddie for future films. I think the Marvels was great, and I think there are many reasons that the Marvels struggled at the box office, but that's obviously going to affect Kevin Feige's plate. So I do think this is sort of a fulcrum moment in MCU, and it makes total sense to me that the Star Wars movie would have just been like, hey, it didn't work out. But also it does make total sense of like Feige's got a lot to concentrate on with MCU.
I like that as a final thought, and we'll put a final thought on the final thought and the final thoughts here. But yeah, that the idea that he's busy with MCU is maybe taken as can be taken and definitely stated as an overall negative thing, other than what you've just described as there's a lot on his desk every day.
There is,
you know,
and people want to portray it as superhero movies are done, MCU is done. Those make flashy headlines. They're worth discussing, but it is natural that a property, a storyline, a sort of unprecedented thing like MCU is going to need to evolve and have some growing pains.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right now, though, we are looking at I guess we'll say film slate, but we have 3 announced films that we got: Star Wars Celebration London and all the joy of there with Mangold. We got the New Jedi Order. We got Filoni and his Filoni-verse film. We got all that stuff. Plus we got Taika still in the works. You mentioned Sean Levy. He's got some stuff out there too, still working. He also has a lot of things. There's a lot of people working on Star Wars films who have also a lot of things going, which is why the films are in this unannounced time. And also, we can't forget that the Lando series is now being developed by the Glover brothers as a movie project. That kind of sprung up. So there's a lot there. How does that slate feel to us as fans? And we also should talk a little bit of Lando as a movie.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of Lando as a movie. I think we could do, and maybe should do a whole episode just about the streaming realities of maybe they put out too much. Maybe some projects should have been bigger. I really love the Kenobi television show, but I think it would have ultimately been more satisfying at the larger scale and of a movie. So I wonder if them looking at a legacy character like Lando and major talent like the Glover brothers and going, that should be a movie. So that reconsideration makes total and complete sense to me. What do you think on that one?
Absolutely. And it's just kind of the wave of the industry, and those waves come crashing into the shore pretty fast of, you know, and I don't 100% agree with you in my own statement here, but oopsie with Solo, which again, totally wrong, but oopsie with Solo, let's pull back Kenobi. Oh, a 6-part series. That's great. We go over there. You and I love that series. It means a lot to us, but also it was shot during a troubling time. And let's have a discussion about, you know, workers in the VFX industry and how much time and money they have to complete their project. Cause I think some of that was showed up on screen and it's not their fault. And then now suddenly here we are again of like, oh, let's take that series and make it a movie. It's just this Harry Chapin, all my life's a circle kind of song lyric. And I think that's important. I think that's okay. And I'm excited. You get 2 very talented creators. Now, there was kind of a switch in the, you know, leadership of this project. Yeah. We don't all the details, and I just don't want to speculate on that. Also with Donald Glover, you have another person, Kathleen Kennedy has a few times said of, Donald will let us know when he's ready. He's got a lot going on. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it on the big screen or at least see it in a shorter 2-hour chunk on my couch, which is, again, another talk about the industry. I do have a lot of questions about the change in streaming and what's coming forward and how many new series will actually emerge post the Acolyte coming out and the continuation of the show's already out there.
Yeah, we got Skeleton Crew and Acolyte and Mando continuing. And yeah, so it's a very, very different time. I pulled this Sean Levy quote too, that came out during the strike.
Okay.
This is from Variety on October 23rd. Sean Levy saying, when Kathy Kennedy brought me on board to make a Star Wars movie, her central mandate to me was, I want a Sean Levy movie. I want a story in a tone that reflects you and your taste and what you bring to your movies with a Star Wars story. So I have felt extremely empowered. We are in early days, unfortunately, because the development process was abruptly paused due to the WGA strike. But I feel very empowered to trust my instincts in the development of this story and movie. I think that's a great quote. I think it is very similar to things that Kathleen Kennedy has said. I think it's very similar to things that other filmmakers have said. I tend to believe that it is we really do want these to be personal films. I can't find anywhere, to my knowledge, where Lucasfilm has said anything about this movie. So I definitely consider this in the category of Toby and Jessica are dating.
It just goes back. I remember even our discussion of when this news broke on this. It was just kind of like a rumor, and I can't remember all the details, but correct me if I'm wrong. It was like a rumor, and then Sean Levy or Levy, which is weird. There's Eugene Levy, and then ESPN anchor Steve Levy. I don't know. I have to look up which way he goes. You're right. But when he just got tweeted a cheeky confirmation, we always say go to StarWars.com for official news, and I don't think this has ever been on it, but I count it as it's happening in some shape or form. They're getting coffee at least. This project.
Yeah, I have no doubt it's in development. That one irked me because headline straight up ran with this movie confirmed. Like,
yes,
no, the writer director said he was having talks, and the headlines just to me mangled the truth to the point of lying. And there are people who are just super excited about it. They want this. And you know, it's not everybody's job to be an entertainment journalist and go, well, let me dig for 15 minutes in the middle of my workday. So to me, this one was really about the headlines playing fair. I think this one is in development, and it might happen, it might not, but I don't think it's been announced in any way by Lucasfilm.
Yeah, and definitely for me, you know, the three announced films is the field on which I'm playing on right now. The other ones, and Lando, I get it, you know, it's there, but like again, your 2037 joke / prediction is not untrue for any of these other projects. If you got 3 or 4, each of these cats seems to have like 3 or 4 things in the works.
Yep,
from Sean Levy, Taika Waititi, and Donald Glover, like they all have. You know, Joseph, not that every one of Taika's 4 scripts are going to be into movies, but if he's got 4 projects, that's years of development and work and shooting production. So I'm excited for if some of this stuff becomes official. But to your big point earlier, I'm just not worried in a good way. It's fun. I'm just not worried.
Yeah. So for the 3 that were publicly announced at Star Wars Celebration in London, Rey in the New Jedi Order, and then Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, biblical epic as he's described it. And then I believe the Filoni film has been described basically as a New Republic film, with strong implications that it is tying together the stories that have been playing out in the New Republic era on Disney Plus. So Mando, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, most likely Skeleton Crew. So out of those 3, how are you feeling about which ones you want, which ones are actually going to happen, and when? Where are you at with those?
I'm still very excited. The feelings in London, and yes, it's easy to sit in an arena and you have a coffee and you're jazzed because you're in London and you get announced and Daisy Ridley comes out. Yeah, of course that's fun, but the excitement's still there for me on that project. Shamina Bay-Chenoy, everything she has said, and I know you get what Stephen Knight working on the script with her. Everything she has said has got me excited for that project. Daisy back has got me excited for that project. Coming out of Dial of Destiny, a film I enjoyed and have enjoyed even more in subsequent viewings. I'm interested to see what Mangold can do with the big themes. We can get into the weeds down the line on another show. Not worries, but I wonder, you know, how much he's paying attention to all the other things. You know, there's going to be a weird, I just have a fear that people are going to be like, well, where's the Mortis gods? And James will be like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? But his big biblical epic, I'm excited about. The Filoni one, I'm curious about and excited. Don't want anyone to jump on me for that. I'm curious, especially from where we're going, because we still have so much to be revealed in the shows. So I think my excitement will build on that once we get to Mando 4. If there is Ahsoka season 2, Skeleton Crew, which we still don't even have an official announcement yet, that kind of got quietly pulled back, and there's some quiet rumors that maybe soon, but we don't have anything official. So that's kind of, you didn't ask for me to rank them, but I'm still excited in that order.
No, I partially asked because I am excited in an order. I'm still very, very most excited for myself personally on Rey and the Jedi Order. I just think I love the character of Rey. I think yes, it's revisiting legacy characters. Yes, it's the Jedi, but there's so much about it that's new to me for the big screen. The existing Star Wars trilogies are coming of age stories, and then there's always been a hunger for, well, now that Vader's Vader, can we see him just being Vader on the big screen?
Mm.
Now that Luke's a Jedi Master, what's he up to? And you got a million books and comics to fill that in now. And this is Rey's story to become the Jedi of that era and the Jedi Master of that era. So to see a film that's like, now this is the journey of, she has completed her coming of age story. And now this is a little bit like the Kenobi show was a coming of a middle-age story of, and what is it like to pass it on and to be a sort of a parent, a mentor of a new generation with the focus on that character, possibly. Ever since in 1983, when Yoda said, pass on what you have learned, I have wanted to see that story more robustly on the big screen. Again, endless books and comics dealing with that. But to see the philosophy behind the building of a new Jedi Order, and from everything that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy has said about the project, it feels to me like a project that is going to look at the Jedi from a positive perspective of like, yes, they're flawed. Yes, it's dangerous to have a group of super-powered space wizards who go, actually, we'll decide what justice is and we'll implement it. Of course, there's danger in that. But it seems from everything she said, it's like there's this new group rising up that's going to look out for the little people. The Jedi Order is going to make it so you can't walk on the little people. And of course, there are forces who don't want that. That's such, we've had a lot of the fall of the Jedi and the flaw of the Jedi. And to see on the big screen, the Jedi are the heroes and somebody else doesn't want there to be heroes. It sounds so good to me. So I'm real excited for that.
And you take a look at the news headlines of the day, from labor unrest to situations that are just absolutely horrendous and tragic in the world. That's one of the themes of helping those trampled underfoot by the systems and the oppressors and those in power. And to have that in Star Wars. And one of the things you're excited, you got me excited about here again is, yeah, you and I both love Rey. I love the character of Rey so much, but I also love what she represents to so many other folks, something you and I have discussed too, from Force Awakens on, and we can play the calendar game a little bit in this discussion of, again, say you're 10, say you're 12 in 2015. Rey is your Jedi, and she's part of a core cast for you that you grew up with. And if this film comes out in 2026, is still kind of, that's the slate spot right now. This is, I'm happy for me and you as Star Wars fans, but I'm happy for that generation that doesn't have to go through what we did, which is, again, not the books and Zahn and all great stuff. Got it. But imagine if at Comic-Con 1988, George had come out and been like, and here's Mark Hamill. He's coming back to this role, and we're going to redo things. And I'm not saying I think Lucas should have done that. Just imagine that. Just imagine that alternate reality and the excitement, and that you could experience Han, Luke, and Leia if they could convince Harrison to come back during this. I don't know. I'm making The Fugitive. Like, it would have been.
The Fugitive is the example I was going to use too. I don't know what it was.
You go to that era of time, right? It's so exciting, and to, that for so many people that aren't us that will get to experience that. I'm excited for them. And then, oh, by the way, knock on wood, I'm still gonna be around. I'm gonna be excited for that too. And yes, there's other characters. I really do hope we get more Finn. I really hope John Boyega can explore that character more, and maybe on a level that he wanted to or wants to now. Oscar Isaac, yes, I'm a big Oscar Isaac fan, but I think he could at times, it seems he could give or take Poe right now. He loves what he did, but all that, I'm going with that.
He's been up and down with it. Yeah.
He came back for Moon Knight, which was a shock for he'd come back into the Disney system for that, but he did it in his way. So if it's right, but anyways, so it's an entire era, but Rey represents so much of what you're talking about. And I'll end my rant here with, if it is a rant, but what you're talking about, those themes are timeless, but they're important now, and they're important for the generations continuing to grow up. And I'm excited to explore that.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying. Imagining, somebody being 12 when The Force Awakens came out, and, they're going to, 2026, maybe they're 23. And they're taking their first steps. I've talked a lot about, I've just been lucky that my age has kind of lined up with Obi-Wan. So I've got to have Obi-Wan as little pal going like, here's what it's like when you're this age. Here's what it's like. And I wish that for other people via Rey. The next up for me is the New Republic versus a threat, which I'm going to guess is Thrawn, after Ahsoka in particular.
Yeah, seems clear.
I really, really, really want this New Republic movie. I want it.
Mm,
I want it bad, Ken.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and partially just for the storytelling and because I'm excited. But I got to admit that this was one of the things that was difficult for me with the Ahsoka show was I got bumped out of the story. I got bumped out of the fantasy by the business realities.
mm,
And I don't like to be, I don't want to be, I just failed. I tried and I failed at
mm,
not
mm,
letting it affect me, but it
mhm.
affected me. And in particular, what it was is there's so much I enjoyed about Ahsoka, but the whole time I'm watching it, particularly the first half when it really is about the threat of will Thrawn return, and kind of watching it knowing well, this isn't going to be Thrawn's whole story. So
Yeah.
how much of Thrawn's story are we going to get? And I love an interconnected universe, but I think I am having this strong desire for chapters of stories to finish.
Yes.
And if there are however many seasons that Favreau has up his sleeve for The Mandalorian, if the skeleton crew is a part of the puzzle, if Filoni feels like he really needs an Ahsoka season 2 to set up this film, like I'm concerned about the business reality of the dance between streaming and
Mhm,
what's on films, that parts of the story are going to be left dangling. And
mhm.
it has been the legacy of Ahsoka as a character for audiences to be left dangling with parts of her story unresolved. And I
Right.
just, I deep, I'm so fascinated with a lot of the world building that was done in Ahsoka about the state of the New Republic and different factions
Mhm,
within the New Republic. And I loved Thrawn. I'm happy that he's back to cause chaos.
mhm.
And I just want the story to finish. And if it's going to finish that movie,
Yeah.
please let's get to the finish line, because I want a completed story, not be left dangling and not be distracted by
Yeah.
every Disney Plus season of New Republic storytelling going, is this going is the our business reality is going to allow this to be a completed story, or
Mm.
are we going to be left dangling for years and decades?
Yeah, think of the end of Clone Wars indeed, right? Before this miracle Clone Wars saved thing that happened.
Mhm.
So glad we got. Yeah, I'm with you too. We'll be discussing Ahsoka in more detail soon here on the show. But yeah, that I'm with you on that. And by the way, it's not. I don't even know. Correct me if I'm wrong too. It's not like a criticism. It's just a feeling. It's just a
Mhm.
reality. The tragic loss of Ray Stevenson.
Mm.
And
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking, and it hung over for me too. Of like, oh, is this wrapping up? Is he going? Is he being sliced in two in that character? No, there's a wonderful, beautiful open ending thing with this character, and now they have to deal with that, and you can't help that. So that's not a criticism. You can't help that, but the realities were there for me in this series, and some of that too. So to your point, yeah, I'm excited to get it to a film.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited. I just think the landscape has changed a little bit from when Disney Plus was really hot, Mando was really hot,
Yeah.
to is I going to come in and go, no, no, no. I mean, one of the many factors with the Marvels is that it was the first film that pulled strongly from the Disney Plus shows. Two
Right.
of the main characters, having seen the film, I think it is you can entirely understand the film, the plot, the emotions, who the characters are without ever seeing those Disney Plus shows, Ms.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel and WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no doubt that it's richer if you did.
Mm.
And people are going to be looking for lots of different reasons to explain the box office failure of the Marvels. And that's the businessy stuff that makes me nervous about Disney looking at this and going, oh, we thought it was going to be a monster hit maker to build
Yes.
love for characters on the small screen and then give them a big movie. But now we're going to take this lesson, true or not, from the Marvels, that doesn't work, and we're going to slam the brakes. That's
Yeah,
my concern with this movie, with the
and
New Republic wrap it all up film.
we're going to have this discussion in the second half of the show of Star Wars in different forms, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality. I mean, that's where I get really grumpy about discussion around some of these movies, like the Marvels movies. Yeah, I haven't seen one. You know, one of the reasons I haven't seen, I don't need to go. I know I don't need to go to the theater. I know I can wait, right? And that's
Yep.
part of the discussion. That one of the characters was introduced in a wonderful, well-received show by those that watched it that was left out to die opposite the Kenobi show, a legacy Star Wars character. There's those kind of discussions around it, and I think that's some of it too. And we can get into that. It might shock some folks. I know Star Wars fans that don't have Disney Plus that are just now sitting down to that Mando show, or I heard Boba Fett was bad. I didn't watch it. Is that true, Kent? Like, these are conversations I have in my real life, off the fake podcast life we live. Really, no. And that's it's just the reality, man. It's the reality. So, yeah, interesting discussion to put a pin in there. Where you at with Mangold? You and I are both positive on Dial of Destiny. He's an interesting, intense cat, but also I think has a funny persona around him too. I didn't, as I've joked before, loved a lot of his films. Never knew it was him directing them. Girl Interrupted, 310 to Yuma. But I've become more and more a fan of that film. But curious where you're at with the final one there.
I absolutely loved Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I saw it in the theater 3 times.
Yeah,
I'm gonna buy it on physical media. I love the hell out of that movie. So creatively, just as a somebody to sit down and watch a movie, I really hope the Mangold film happens. I'm not really holding it close to my heart because I'm afraid of loss. I think out of the 3 that got announced, I think it was a brilliant announcement of we're looking toward the past, present, and the future. We got a New Republic movie building out of the television shows. We're going into the farthest future of Star Wars we ever have on the big screen with Rey and continuing her story. Now we're going to go back super far in time. It made sense, but it is the one most easily dropped from the slate, I think. It's a ways off. And I think that there is this problem right now. It's always been there in Hollywood, but it seems to be ramping up to an untenable place where the powers that be want to hire people who are hot. Which means they have all sorts of projects in development. Because it's like, we're going to hire somebody with 1 project in development. They're not very hot. So they want people who are juggling a bunch of stuff. They want to announce somebody right after they came off of a big success, or right after they had a really good relationship with the studio, like Mangold clearly did with Lucasfilm. Yeah. But then our society is reacting so fast, so hot, so cold that that's the Taika Waititi phenomenon of pop culture put him on the tallest pillar we could find after Ragnarok, and they couldn't get a Star Wars movie out in time before pop culture pulled him right down. And I don't think that people put Mangold on a pillar for Logan, which I agree with. Yeah. I don't know if he's being pulled off as violently. Yeah. But he's stumbling in terms of the pop culture, is he hot or not? Right. Popularity game. All this is business. This has nothing to do with creativity to me. Right. It has nothing to do with the story I want to see. This is analysis of our weird pop culture world and how it intersects with the industry. The cycle of put him on the pillar, pull him down has never been faster than it is now. And it's a relatively recent phenomenon, I think, that we do it so incredibly strongly with directors and screenwriters as well as with actors. Yeah, yeah. The age of the director opening pictures versus the movie star, right? That's more to the people and me that have discussed it. No, I agree with you on that. And I always forget Logan. Logan was a Mangold film. Real good. I watched the documentary on Indie, which is I forget which version I have that it popped up, and I know we got the Harrison doc coming too, which is another story we didn't really put in there. But we got the Harrison Ford doc coming as well very shortly. Mangold very clearly has a great relationship with Kathleen Kennedy, Disney, Lucasfilm. Even recent comments about George and his involvement with some advice, script and dailies and stuff like that, looking at that with Indy. So I don't say this to stoke any kind of internet drama, in which Mangold will be the first to tweet me and go, "You're an idiot." I don't think there's a danger of him flipping the table and saying, "I'm out of here." But to my even joke that I made,
of he wants to go tell his story. And if he does come up against something, and well, we got this planet Peridia, and have you considered this and the Mortis gods and that, and he's going to be like, yeah, but here's what I want to do. And he's strong-minded, as he should be, as all directors are. Hey, this is what I want to do. I'm with you. There's a fear of loss that might be unfounded, completely unfounded, but we have to admit, yeah, there's a lot of the missteps, a lot of what you're saying. Let's get the hottest names. Dan and Dave, you're doing good. Gulp. Though a lot of that was Netflix came in the back door and was like, would you like a $300 million deal? Or would you like to face scorn from another fandom? Got it. All right, cool. Patty Jenkins, all these names. And I don't fault anyone there at Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, or below or above. Go and get those names. By all accounts, it was Bob Iger that said, Lord and Miller are going to direct that Lawrence Kasdan script. This is what I want, because they're hot, and they are hot, and they're still hot. But I'm with you. It's okay to admit that we might have a little fear. I'm interested in getting to that era, beyond High Republic, beyond Old Republic, and going to the Alpha Republic, if you want to call it, the beginning. I'm so excited, and I think he's the guy to do it right now, based on Dial of Destiny and some of the other things you're talking about, including Girl Interrupted, quite frankly. But yeah, I like your point. I hadn't really factored that into my excitement, Joseph, so thank you. There's a fear of loss I must deal with.
Yes, but we must deal with it well, as Star Wars has taught us.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, there you go. Any final big thoughts there? That's the 3 announced.
No, I think that's a pretty good look at the slate, and I am happy to save other thoughts for the future.